Thank you, Andy. Yeah, once again, my name is Devin Slaven. I am the Stormwater Program Manager, Environmental Manager for the City of Lake Forest. And I will just do a quick point out that the Assistant City Manager, Keith, had mentioned our landscaping around the campus. And please also note that what may not be obvious is that a lot of that landscaping is actually LID, low impact development best management practices to manage our stormwater. And I'm speaking behalf of the City of Lake Forest, as well as my counterparts and colleagues of the other neighboring jurisdictions in South Orange County, as well as the County of Orange for the unincorporated areas. And I just wanted to preface our presentation because we are here to discuss the protection of our local natural resources, and each one of my colleagues in our respective jurisdictions implements a comprehensive program to manage pollution prevention. But the regulatory side is only one part of the equation. So I'll just kick off the nexus. In 2021, it's reported as the third driest year reported in over 100 years of precipitation record. And as was already mentioned, some of the researchers are characterizing what we're seeing as a mega drought. So there is a nexus in what we're talking about here with pollution prevention and water conservation. And that's what all of this is about. And it will actually be highlighted by a colleague of mine a little bit later, Kim Buss, who will be speaking about a project in particular. The underpinning of our program begins with outreach and education. And one of the most important key components is the differentiation, educating people on the difference between the sewer system and the storm drain system. So the sewer system is composed of all the drains that you typically find indoors, sinks, toilets, etc. Those are typically not exposed to stormwater. And those discharges gets picked up in pipes, carried to a treatment plant, all of that's treated. Eventually that treated water does discharge out into the ocean. That's very different than the storm drain system. Storm drain system was principally designed to collect all the water in the city and get it the heck out of there as quick as possible. Why? To preserve life and property. Unfortunately, that also means that that water is not treated prior to being discharged. So that water is collected, potentially carrying pollutants, and it goes to our local creeks and lakes, and then eventually to the ocean. So our management program is organized into watershed management areas and watersheds. So this is a depiction of our watershed management area for South Orange County. And if you're interested in looking up more information on the specific watershed that you're in, you can go to the H2O website and find out information for your specific watershed. So our comprehensive programs are broken up into various components organized, such as business, industrial, commercial, and we also have a HOA and residential program. So I'm going to be talking about the HOA program here. So we do have a program a program element that's specific to HOAs and residential. The goal is to increase the understanding and implementation of the BMPs and prevent the pollutants from reaching our local environmental resources. So why are we talking to you today? How can HOAs help us? HOAs have the power to encourage change, and we'll go through some of the ways to do that. HOAs also have the power to enforce rules and regulations, and also at the most basic element of implementing best management practices, or BMPs, in the common interest areas. In our program and our program element, we have resources, and the underpinning of resources is the BMP fact sheet. BMP fact sheet basically is kind of the answers to the test. It tells you some of the issues that it's addressing, and the BMP fact sheets are targeted at, they're activity specific. So if there's an activity that generates certain pollutants, we have solutions to reduce those pollutants or eliminate them completely. And those fact sheets can be found on the H2OC website, as well as each of the city websites. So to give you a quick example, we have fact sheets that are organized in specific types of activities, such as low impact development, pollution prevention for construction sites, pollution prevention for businesses. And that brings us to best management practices that we're going to talk about for HOAs. Probably our major focus area of the day, and for us as regulators and partners in pollution prevention, is dealing with over-irrigation. Over-irrigation is actually a prohibited discharge in South Orange County. That is actually not set by the cities, but rather the state. We are required to enforce that and get out and educate people and create positive change. So some of the solutions for over irrigation, as you can see, reduce outdoor water usage by reducing the time. We're usually talking about the cycle and soak type of schedule, where we want to reduce the duration of the irrigation, but increase the frequency. Great tools, and obviously there's resources here today that can discuss smart timers for irrigation, sprinkler heads, and also just keeping on top of your irrigation system with the operation of maintenance. Landscape maintenance, in everyday activities such as landscape maintenance, that has the potential to introduce pollutants such as pesticides and fertilizers. So we address those through some solutions such as utilizing drought tolerant and insect resistant landscaping. That reduces not only the requirements for irrigation, but also for fertilizers and pesticides. And you'll see a theme going through here. So we also ask that you consider using natural fertilizers and pesticides when needed, removing weeds, because those will create a larger demand for water. And we also ask that the weeds, if possible, be removed mechanically instead of using pesticides. Mulch and compost use in landscaping is awesome. By getting that coverage, you actually lessen the evapotranspiration effect or the water lost through the soil. And then it's also a natural weed suppressant. And then we also ask, we do deal with other pollutants such as bacteria, so removal of pet waste is key. Irrigation system maintenance, we've kind of gone over some of these, but we do focus on issues such as ensuring proper aim. Please try not to water the sidewalk instead of the plants. Setting and using timers, watering at the right time of the day, watering by hand if you can, and also just ensuring that you're observing your irrigation system regularly and checking for leaks and fixing issues. Street sweeping. So street sweeping is both a public and private street issue. Some of the issues is that brake dust, metals, oils, organic debris, trash accumulate in the street. So each city has its own street sweeping program for public streets. And for private streets, there should be a street sweeping program as well. And we ask that you maintain a consistent schedule and also try to ensure there's proper outreach and education for the residents so that they're moving their cars on the correct days. We ask the HOAs incorporate requirements into their contracts, and that's something that actually each city does in its own contracts. The city of Lake Forest, for example, is a fully contractual city. So we have landscape contractors and we incorporate those requirements into our contracts. If you do need examples, you can contact one of us and we can certainly provide an example of what that looks like. Training and outreach for the contractors, ensuring that they are aware of BMPs and any kind of prohibitions and other requirements for stormwater. And the other key thing is HOAs have access to residents for outreach and education. Those things that we've seen very, very, very helpful, and we ask for your help, is using the association newsletters, as well as the web pages and your email blasts or any other methodologies that you might use. So before I turn it over to my colleague, Kim, just wanted to point out, we do have a comprehensive program in place. The maintenance activities that HOAs perform and your contractors perform do or can impact the water, and we hope that they do not, but that's why we have a program in place to prevent watershed pollution by using the BMPs, and the primary resource is the BMP fact sheets that are found on H2OC or our respective websites. We do have contact information for all of the cities in the county represented here, which you can reference later. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Kim Buss.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Devin. That was a really good overview of what it is. He and myself and all of our South County co-permittees, as we refer to ourselves, we all are under the state's MS4 permit, which means we have certain requirements to maintain the quality of the water going down our storm drains. So we have, Devin kind of alluded to, we've under requirements by the state that irrigation runoff is illicit discharge. And so we do need to follow up with all of our constituents within our respective jurisdictions in order to make sure that we maintain the quality of the water going through our system. And as Devin said, eventually reaching the creeks, the bays, estuaries, oceans. So part of what we're doing right now is working with, let's see if that works, yeah. We have South Orange County Watershed Management Area has a water quality improvement program, which we are being held to by the state, by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And they've identified through this program three, I always get this mixed up, high priority water quality concerns. And those three are human pathogen health risk. And we kind of alluded to that earlier. The stormwater brings down other pathogens, and besides chemicals, also dog feces and things like that. Stream erosion and unnatural water balance. The county right now with this project that I'm about to talk to you about is hoping to address the third one, which is unnatural water balance. And in part by eliminating those controllable sources of non-stormwater runoff. So when it's not raining, we still have water going through our MS4 system, our municipal separate storm sewer system. Sorry, I keep throwing that out there, but that's our storm drain system is the MS4 as we refer to it. Since 2015, the Orange County Stormwater Program, including all of our permittees, which is all of our cities here and all the others in South Orange County, have been conducting a program that has been carrying out, which is referred to as the Dry Weather Outfall Inspection Program. The purpose of this is to prioritize the outfalls that have persistent flow. Just during dry weather, we still see water coming out there. Subsequently to that, and that is still ongoing, but in 2019, we began a WQIP Water Quality Improvement Program outfall capture feasibility study. And that was based on isotope analysis that basically looked at the, sorry, I was in my mic, that basically was looking at where is that water coming from? Is it groundwater? Is it surface water? And basically by doing, and I can't go into this too much because I'm not the chemist, but by doing these isotope analysis, you can see the difference between whether it's a surface water or groundwater that's coming down the drain, basically. A fingerprint, yeah, in a sense, exactly. So this is just kind of a little schematic of basically what it is the program is requiring us to do. And as you can see here, we've taken the outfall capture feasibility study, looked at all of our major outfalls that had flow in them. And then we also wanted to make sure that if they did have flow in them, continuous flow that we saw on a regular month-to-month basis, then another question was, are they connected to receiving waters, or do they just kind of end up somewhere like in a canyon that, you know, never makes it necessary unless with a big storm or rain event? So if we see a connectivity to receiving waters, then we want to look at a couple of different factors. Basically, the contribution to the receiving water flow, the flow magnitude, the base flow proportion to the you know, other flows during storm events and whatnot. And basically from that, we assign it a priority. If it's something, a high priority would say, okay, let's evaluate the feasibility of structural outfalls. And when we say structural outfalls, we're talking about something like a diversion that would take the non-stormwater flows and put them into the sanitary sewer. That would be considered a structural thing. And then also if we see just, you know, just medium flow, or, you know, not a high priority, source control strategies, including public outreach. And Devin alluded to this earlier also. We have a huge program, and Andy, our MC, is actually leads up the county's H2OC program. So any public outreach information and whatnot, as Devin mentioned, was h2oc.org. You can find all kinds of useful public outreach information. So that's where we are now, as we were looking at this and we thought, okay, we identified, I'm going to see my next slide here. We identified a certain outfall. We refer to it as LO5 489-3, and it's located downstream of Ladera Ranch, which is one of, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but I represent the unincorporated portions of the county, in South County as well as North County. And so Ladera Ranch is one of our unincorporated areas that is within the county's jurisdiction. So this is where we're focusing our studies on. City of Laguna Beach will focus its studies on its jurisdiction. Lake Forest will focus its studies on Lake Forest jurisdiction. So it's just an example of what each of us, our jurisdictions, are going to be doing here moving into the future. So basically you can see here this circle, the one with the red circle around it. It was identified because it has, let me go back one slide, oops, two slides. Outfall LO5 489-3 was identified through that isotope analysis I mentioned earlier as being made up primarily 90% of imported water, meaning that it didn't have the fingerprint of groundwater. It had other constituents in it that made it more identifiable as surface water and imported water at that. So that's why we were looking at LO5 489-3. And it had continuous flow. Every time we went out to the site, it had continuous flow. So this is just, these are taken from our work plan for this project. And this is basically, you're looking at the drainage area for that particular outfall that we identified. So all of the flow from, if you look up to the upper right-hand corner is commercial areas, you'll see the green dots. Those represent commercial areas of the drainage area. And if you continue to look down, the majority of it is residential at that point. We have some fields, some parks and whatnot. And also you can see we have recycled water lines as well as open channels and storm drains going throughout this whole system, all of which make up our, flow into our MS4. So what we did is we identified a sub-watershed and then divided it into drainage areas. So that sub-watershed was what you just saw earlier. And now we have 3 drainage areas. And we did this by putting in 3 different weirs or flow monitors. And you can see in this next picture, that's basically what it is. So a weir is where we narrow the flow down so it's easy to capture and easy to measure. And so we installed those into each of these locations. You can see weir 1 at the bottom, weir 2, and weir 3. Each of those were strategically placed to capture, flow. My mic still working? It sounded weird. To capture flow. Nope. Sorry. I can yell, but I don't know if I'll do that. Did I do something?
Those are fine.
No, that's fine. Okay. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so let me start with, okay, so the weirs were strategically placed to capture flow from these three areas respectively. The flow is then monitored from just this past June 25th through July 16th. So those are the three drainage areas we identified. And there's a picture of, so after, at the end of the 1 month period, we gathered all the flow data and we identified basically where was the majority of the flow from those three drainage areas, where was the majority of the flow coming from? How many? 2. Okay, 2 minutes. Okay. So we basically identified that drainage area 1, right here in the lowest southeastern portion of the watershed, was giving us the highest amount of flow during that month-long period. And so what we did is we sent staff out. We actually worked with a consultant, Wood Environmental, and they sent their staff out on 3 different occasions from midnight to 6 a.m. And they did what we refer to as a windshield survey, just driving around and looking at where the majority of the runoff was coming from. Peak flows were noted during the hours of 12 a.m. and 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. as I mentioned. And yeah, and so they were sent out there to survey and identify and record observations of non-stormwater runoff. This is just an example of some of the imagery that we collect. They're using their phones, and they have an application on their phone where they can fill in all the information, exact location, and give an estimate and a quality of either very high, medium, or low as far as the flow rate goes. Nope, that's my time. And I guess that's my last slide. So that's where we're at right now. So we're performing we're going to do 2 more rounds of the flow monitoring, and then we're going to go back out. And then the last part of this is that the purpose of all this is now we are working with our H2OC.org organization to put together public outreach materials to those communities that we're seeing this, the over irrigation and whatnot. So that's my presentation for now. Thank you.